Welcome, everyone. It's always a treat for us to get together as a staff. And on occasions like this, when someone so special to us has offered to speak to us. It's been just a year since we got to know Myrtle Smyth. And she brought her two lovely daughters, and they kind of became part of our family for several weeks. And she had some informal discussions with us. And so when she was coming again, now as a member of the Christian Science Board of Lectureship, she's hopping around the country, but made this her first stop. And we're so glad that she felt she had some time to, again, have an informal discussion with us. She's going to begin with some preliminary remarks and then just see what happens. She is from Belfast, Northern Ireland. Should have said on your announcement. We're getting our geography straightened out a little better. We put Ireland, but you know there is a difference there. She could... And so we're just going to get started. As I say, there will be a time for questions, and we just really want to give her a welcome. Mrs. Smyth, Myrtle Smyth.
Thank you, Wendy, for that lovely welcome. And thank you, everyone at 10 Acre, who always make me so welcome. I just love to come here. It's like coming home. So thank you for that. Now, our little get-together this afternoon, believe me, is very informal. It's so informal that I haven't what I was about to say finished on this paper. But it's something I want us all to join in together. You see, I have been thinking a lot in the last year about the subject of joy, of how often we read about joy in the lesson sermon and thanksgiving. And I've been wondering how much attention we really pay to that. How much do we express joy? When you stop to think about it, I think we don't express it as much as we should. We feel that we can't be joyful because we've got so many problems, or there are so many problems in our world, or in our circumstances, or homes, or families, and we feel that if all these things would change, we could express joy. But really, we've got it the other way around. It took me a long time to see that. You know, they say the Irish are a bit thick, but I think maybe we're all a bit thick when it comes to that. You know, are we really listening to God? Now, if you're going through a problem right now, and I bet each and every one of you is, I wonder how I knew that. Because when we stop having problems, we'll have ascended. We won't even be here. We all think that when our problem is solved, when this thing goes away, when circumstances change, I will express joy and happiness. But that's a bit like putting oil in your car after your car starts to behave. You don't put the oil in the car afterwards. You put the oil in the car first, and then the car starts to behave. And the oil that we're talking about is the oil of gladness, the oil of joy, the oil of thanksgiving. These are the things that bring oil to the solution. So many health problems are because of dryness, a sense of drying up, brittleness of the bones, and old age and decay. They're all things that are drying up, and we need oil. Now, I know that we as Christian Scientists pray a lot with Mrs. Eddy's definition of oil in the Christian Science textbook, and that's very helpful. It's been helpful to me. But it's only in the last year that I've begun to think about this oil of gladness. and joy and thanksgiving. The Bible talks so much about joy, praise, rejoicing. It even says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. So if we want to enter into God's very presence, we have to do it in a spirit of thanksgiving. If we go with a heavy heart and plead with God about all our problems, we're really not entering the gates at all. Some people just coming in, I'll let them be seated. We're talking today about the subject of joy, really maintaining our joy. And I've just been talking about a verse in the Bible that says, enter into his gates with thanksgiving and into his courts with praise. So that means if we want to feel really close to God, really feel that we're in his presence, we must do it in a spirit of joy and thanksgiving instead of a spirit of heaviness. In Proverbs, there's another verse which is a favorite of mine. It says, a merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. So is it any wonder we suffer from dryness? A merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. The Amplified Bible says about this verse, a happy heart is a good medicine, and a cheerful mind works healing, but a broken spirit dries the bones. Now I want to read to you what the Interpreter's Bible says about that verse. There are about 3 or 4 pages. And I'd like to read it to you because I feel that the Interpreter's Bible says it so well that I didn't need to write it at all. I'll take it from there. I'll let these people find a seat. It's nice to see so many of you coming out today. Good. I've been talking about a verse in Proverbs. It says, a cheerful heart. A merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. Now this is what the Interpreter's Bible has to say about this verse. A cheerful heart is a good medicine, or as Moffat translates it, a glad heart helps and heals. A number of the Proverbs exalt the value of cheerfulness for the person who cultivates a cheerful outlook upon life. Good health is only one of the dividends paid. For the person who cultivates a cheerful outlook. So we need to cultivate a cheerful outlook. It isn't going to come all at once. Sometimes we work about being more loving. We're trying to cultivate a sense of loving. Or we're trying to cultivate a sense of peace. Well, it's exactly the same with joy. So we can cultivate a sense of joy in our life and our experience. When a person is ill, now this is all from the Interpreter's Bible. When a person is ill, God's healing power is at work in his body. But this power is often hindered when the patient becomes deeply anxious, lonely, morose, or bitter. A gloomy spirit can make it very difficult for healing power to work. Let the patient experience an inward awareness of this healing force, and let him overcome his heaviness of heart, and he will find his new outlook to be like a medicine. We as Christian Scientists often concentrate in healing the body, but I think I'm beginning to see that what we really need to do is to heal this sense of heaviness of heart, and to claim the joy first, and that helps in the healing process. The Interpreter's Bible goes on to say, for many generations, healers could do very little to help men's bodies by way of medicine. Before the age of scientific medicine, the chief task of the medicine man was to do something for the spirit of man. For the most part, he used various devices to give people new assurance and to build a basis of confidence and joy. Many healers were helpful by dealing directly with men's hearts, with uplifting their spirit. Good news restores the energies of people. Have you ever noticed that? If a patient is ill, or you're ill yourself, or unhappy, and you suddenly get good news, you feel so much better immediately. Good news will restore the energies of people. Good news will invigorate the flagging energies of a band of explorers. A homesick child can be changed by an unexpected visit into a dancing elf. Cheerfulness transforms life. Now, for some it seems like folly to try to be cheerful when there's every reason for gloom, doom, and heaviness of heart. They feel there's a lack of realism in trying to smile when the facts seem to call only for weeping. An individual may affirm that he is temperamentally not the optimistic type, and that he should not be expected to serve the Lord or himself with gladness. But a spirit of cheerfulness is not something that is automatic or an individual result of particular events. The same circumstances may cause one person to be glum and yet not prevent another person from being cheerful. Cultivating a cheerful outlook in life is as much a deliberate act as is the attempt to control one's temper, or to the determination to be compassionate towards people in need. This good medicine cannot be brewed in a herb shop, encased in a capsule and swallowed. It is the product of a will that refuses to give way to gloom and doom, and it grows from a faith that all things can be made to work to some good end as one cooperates with God. This is still the Interpreter's Bible I'm reading from. During the pre-war years, a group of nurses in the Ellen Mitchell Memorial Hospital in Burma discussed this question during their Tuesday morning Bible hour. What does it take to make a Christian? They all agreed that repentance and acceptance of forgiveness put one into a Christian fold. But then they asked what it takes, as the days go on, to build up an even stronger Christian personality. They listed over 25 characteristics that are needed. Faith was placed first, followed by service and love. But Dr. Martha Gifford, who reported this experience in a communication to the Women's American Baptist Foreign Mission Society, then wrote, "Some were convinced that cheerfulness must surely be a part of a Christian personality, especially to those who work among the suffering. Who ever knew a grumpy old grouch who cranks all the time help a sick person to get well? It is the merry heart that doeth good like a medicine." And we decided that no matter what the circumstances, a smile 3 times a day and at bedtime should be a minimum in a Christian hospital. We also advised a standing order for extras to be given whenever circumstances should demand. A glad heart of this type helps and heals the body in which it beats. It also helps those who come into the circle of this influence. Now that was all from the Interpreter's Bible about that verse that I quoted. A merry heart doeth good like medicine, but a broken spirit drieth the bones. Make sure that you're all taking great doses of the oil of gladness every day. Let that be your medicine. It oils your body. It oils your mind. It oils your whole experience. Like I talked about with the car, we pour the oil in first for the car to run well. We don't pour the oil in after the car starts running well. It's the other way round, and the oil is the oil of gladness. Just try it. Try it out for yourselves. Several years ago, about 8 years ago, I was working at Hawthorne House in England as a house mother to the nurses there. And one of the perks of my job was that 4 of my children could come and visit me at the weekends. And one Saturday they came to visit me, and it was a very wet, gloomy day, and we decided to go to a big shopping mall nearby. And I had been reading in the local newspaper that it was Smile Week. And as we were walking towards the bus, I began to discuss this with my teenage children. And I said, you know, there's great power in a smile. If you smile at someone and you really mean it, they must respond, they'll smile back. So my teenage children said, I don't believe that. That's nuts. If you smile at people and get you locked up, to think there's something wrong with you. And I began to think, isn't that a disgrace that young people feel that way, that you shouldn't really smile at people? And I said to them, well, you try it, it works. And they said, we've got a better idea, you try it. And we'll see if it works. So we proceeded to the bus to go to the shopping mall. And I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And they said, well, we're not walking with you. We walked just behind and we watched what happened. So they were walking one behind the other. And there's Mother Hen out in the front. So first of all, a lady came up with a dog. And I smiled at her, a nice warm smile. Well, she stopped and she looked all round, as if to say, who is she smiling at? But suddenly she got the message and she smiled back. Then I met two teenagers, and I smiled at them, and their response was very quick. And then a couple more people, and I smiled at them. And I noticed that little children were the people who responded most quickly. By this time, we'd reached the bus stop. As I said, it was a really wet day, and there was an Indian man getting on the bus with 3 little children and piles of shopping. He looked absolutely weighed down. So I walked up to the bus stop and smiled at him. And suddenly this man scowled at me. It gave me such a look as if to say, who is this mad woman that's smiling at me? And we got onto the bus, and he sat in the long seat with all his children and all his shopping. And my children walked to the back of the bus. They sat in the back row, and I sat in the one in front, and they were sitting behind me saying, see, it doesn't work. That poor man is horrified. He thinks you're trying to get off with him. Don't do it anymore, or you're not our mother, we're not with you. When all of a sudden, the penny dropped, this little man got the message. And he stood up on the bus, and he smiled, and he waved, and then his children smiled, and they waved. And the other people in the bus thought he was smiling and waving at them. And they all began to smile and wave. And my kids were saying, okay, we believe you, don't do it anymore. You proved your point. But you see, the whole bus was smiling. And I said, you see, that's just the power of a smile. Look what a smile does. So be determined to smile more. And I found them in the shopping centre, when they thought I wasn't looking, smiling at people. And it really did work. Talking about smiling and being happy, I remember once I went to a seminar at Claremont School in England. It was for the Christian Science Monitor. And some people had come over from Boston for this. And this speaker was telling us, and I hope I've got the story right, he was telling us that he had a job with the Christian Science Monitor, and he worked in Boston. And one day he was driving a long distance, and he had an hour to kill between one little town and the next. So he decided, as he had an hour to spend, that he would try to find out if there was any Christian Science activity in this little town. And he stopped, and he looked up Yellow Pages. It said there was a society there. So he went along, but it was all locked up and closed up. And he wondered how he could find a Christian Scientist. So he went to the post office, and he asked the man in the post office, do you have any Christian Scientists live here? He said, well, I know of one. We delivered the Monitor to it. And he gave him the name of this woman. So he looked her up in the telephone book. He introduced himself. He said, I represent the Mother Church, and I would like to know if there's much activity among Christian Scientists in this area. And she said, no, there's not. We've only got a little society, and there are only about 5 members, and there's not much activity going on. He said, well, could I meet with you? Could I drive out to your home? No, she said, that wouldn't suit me at all. He said, well, could you meet me at the church? She said, well, that would be silly because it's all locked up. He said, well, could we have a cup of coffee in town? She said, no. He said, well, could you just meet me at my car? I'd just like to talk to you for 15 minutes about activity in Christian Science in your area. She said, I could tell you in 2 minutes. There's no activity. Very little activity. He said, I would like you to come and meet me anyway. So she came down to meet him at his car. Now, he was about 6'3", and he was leaning on his car, and he said, up came this tiny little woman. And he said she was all bent over. So to not embarrass her, he sort of crouched down so that he was looking right into her face, and they were standing in the street. And he said to her, tell me about your little society. And she said, well, we've only got 5 or 6 members. And she said, out of that, I'm on the board, and I play the organ, and Sunday school superintendent. And well, she went through about 6 or 7 jobs that she had to do in this little society. So still crouching down, he looked in her face and he said, aren't you grateful that out of your whole town, God has chosen you to do all those jobs for him? He said, she looked up at him, she said, yeah. And he said, well, honey, you better tell your face and your voice, because they haven't got the message. And he said that suddenly this little woman started to laugh, and he laughed. And they laughed so much that they were both crying. And they had to hold each other up in the street. And he got in the car, he could hardly see to drive, he drove away. And about a month later, he had a letter from this woman. She said, I want to tell you I haven't stopped laughing since you left. And thank you so much. She said, you helped me to see how burdened I had become in my work. And she said, now I'm doing each task with joy. I'm putting joy into it. And she said, by the way, I've straightened up. Wasn't that nice? She'd straightened up. She'd let go this false sense of burden and began to do whatever she had to do with joy. And I'm finding that as I do things with joy, it makes it so much easier. It makes my practice easier. Now, you might say to me, well, that's okay, but I've got all these problems. I've got financial problems, relationship problems, housing problems. I'm looking for a boyfriend or a girlfriend. I'm lonely. I don't have enough money. There are problems where I work. There are problems with the patients. There's problems in my church. And look at the state of our country. Look at the war in the Gulf. How can you possibly be joyful in all of that? Well, I've learned, even living in a situation like Northern Ireland, that you can be joyful in the middle of it. And that really helps. I don't know if you remember reading a story about artists in England some years ago were asked to paint to a nice picture as to how they saw peace. And there was to be a prize for the winner. And everybody went along to this exhibition of all these lovely paintings. And there were such beautiful paintings of lakes and rivers without a ripple in them, and trees and birds, and everybody was saying, oh, that one will win, that one will win. But when the judge came to choose, he had chosen a picture of a waterfall on a wet and windy day. And it looked very rough. And everybody said to him, where's the peace? There's no peace in that picture. And he said, look at the bottom of the waterfall. And at the bottom of the waterfall was a little bird singing. And he said, that's what peace is. And Jesus left his disciples and the world joy and peace. And he said, I will see you again, and your heart will rejoice, and your joy no man taketh from you. So girls, I say to you, let no man take away your joy. And I say the same to the boys. Don't let any woman take away your joy. Refuse to be intimidated. How often we say, I can't be happy because of this relationship, or it's problem, it's broken up, and now I'm so unhappy without this person. Are you saying that your joy and your happiness all rested on that person? Or if you meet a new fella, you suddenly feel great, and you want a new hairdo and new clothes and a new perfume. But when that relationship breaks up, where's your joy? And where's your peace? It went out the window with the fella. So that's not joy, and it's not peace. We have to learn where our joy and our peace come from. They come from God. God's nature is peaceful. It is joyous. Nothing in the world can disturb God. Nothing. Not even this war that's going on. And why? Because God is of purer eyes than to behold evil, and cannot look on iniquity. Because God sees his universe the way he made it. He sees it perfect, beautiful, intact. And he sees all his creation as all working together, all cooperating together, all loving. And he sees each one as healthy. God doesn't know anything about a sick man, an old man or woman, or a dying man or woman, or a lonely man or woman, or a broken-hearted man or woman. God doesn't see that. He doesn't know it. It's not robbing him of his joy and his peace. So if we're allowing it to rob us of our joy and our peace, then that's our problem. So we don't really need healed of a problem. We need to claim our joy and our peace and say, I refuse to let anything or anyone or any situation rob me of my joy or my peace. It's so bewitching. You know, last week in England, we get much more news about the war than you do, I noticed on your television. And our television in Britain, it's nearly 24 hours a day. It's the war, and they're bringing people in all the time to analyze the situation. I was reading something recently about the paralysis of analysis. And I liked that. I thought how we're always analyzing our problem or somebody else's problem, or analyzing another person to see why they're like that, or analyzing ourselves. That's the paralysis of analysis. Because when we're doing that, we're not acknowledging God. We need to magnify God and not the problem. We're always magnifying the problem. Have you ever noticed that? We make a big deal of it. We ring our friends up. We talk to them about it. Or we ask them to come round. We talk about it all evening. We wasted an evening when we should have been praising God and talking to God and finding out what He's like magnify God and not the problem, whether that's your problem or somebody else's problem. And just like these old medicine men used to do, they didn't concentrate on healing the body. They concentrated on lifting the spirits, or the spirit of the people, and that brought healing to the body. I read a story once, a true story, about a millionaire in New York. I think his name was Mr. Cousins. And he had an incurable disease. And all his millions couldn't save him. And he'd been to every doctor and specialist on this subject, and they'd all given up. And he was left with a very short time to live. And he read in an old book that laughter is great medicine and can heal your body. And he decided to book himself into a suite of rooms in a hotel. He hired a video and all the funny old movies and videos that he could think of, and he laughed and laughed and laughed for 3 weeks, and he was healed. But he said in this that the most important part of the healing was that he now became a joyous person, where when he was making all his millions, he was so anxious about his business and his money and bad-tempered and fighting with people. You see, that's what he needed healed of. He didn't need healed of a disease. He needed healed of an attitude of mind. How many people have you ever met that are really happy? If you sit and think about it, I don't think you could count them on one hand, or maybe one finger. How many people do you think, that person is always so joyous and so happy, I just love to be around them. They do me good. There are not many people. So perhaps if we could work at being more joyous people, more happy people, people would begin to ask us why. They would come to us not to find out about our religion, but to find out, how do you stay stable? How do you stay joyous in the midst of everything that's going on around us? And I have found that a sense of humor helps in healing. I think last time I talked to you, I told you a funny story, didn't I? Well, I'm going to tell you it again. Well, it's about a patient I had in the early days of my practice. And she was a difficult patient. Do you know what that is? She seemed to have no sense of joy. And no matter what I asked her to read or asked her to do, she always came back with these negative answers. She seemed to reverse every truth that you declared to her and everything you said. And she had this awful sense of heaviness. Well, I have been helping her for several weeks. She actually had an obstruction in her bowel. And I knew she suffered a lot of pain, and I wasn't being uncompassionate towards her. But she seemed to be heavy going, and I felt sometimes she seemed to pull me down. Well, one night I was going to bed late. I'd had a busy day in the practice, and the phone went. And I thought, I know who that is. And I decided not to answer, but it kept on ringing. So I went and picked up the phone, and it was her. And I asked her how she was, and she told me. And we went on, I listened to all this stuff, and suddenly she said, I've just been having a lovely bath. She said, I've been in the bath for a whole hour. I've been having a lovely soak. Oh, it was so nice and so comforting. And while I was in the bath, she said, I began to think, I wonder what God's doing right now. And I said to her, you can rest assured he wasn't soaking his bum in the bath. And all of a sudden, I had a picture of a great big bath up in the sky. And a big giant God sitting in it, pulling out his hair and saying, God, what a day I have with this one. And I started to laugh. I couldn't stop laughing. And she said, what are you laughing at? And I said, well, I'm picturing this God. And she started to laugh. And she said, right enough, it's ridiculous, isn't it? You think that God should be sitting up there worrying about us or tearing his hair out and in this big bath? And we both laughed for ages, and I couldn't get to sleep for about an hour. I laughed so much. The next morning, she was the first call on the phone, and she said, do you know, I laughed for about an hour, and at the end of that, the whole thing broke and passed effortlessly and easily. But the interesting thing was that she became a much more joyful person. And she began to look up the words joy in our hymn book and in the writings of Mrs. Eddy and in the Bible. And she said she really saw that the obstruction in her thought was that she found it so difficult to express joy. You see, joy does bring healing. And we all need that. Now, I would like to give you an opportunity to either tell me some of your experiences about joy or ask me questions. Last week I talked to the nurses in Charlton Manor about this, and there was a practitioner there, and she told us that a few years ago she went through an illness, and it made her want to cry all the time. She just couldn't stop crying. She cried and cried and cried. And she rang a practitioner, and he said to her, go and sing. Get the hymnal and sing all the hymns. And she said she was furious because she thought that's the last thing I could do. I'm so miserable. So she decided she'd sit at the piano and she would play the hymns. But as she played, she thought the practitioner said, sing the hymns. So I'll try and sing. And she began to sing through her tears. And then she tried a bit harder. And then she said, have you ever tried to cry and sing at the same time? You just can't do it. And she said the singing won. And that was the end of her tearful experience. You can't cry and sing at the same time. And there's no happy medium. There's no in between. You're either singing with your whole heart and you're putting joy into everything you do, even if it's washing the dishes or emptying a bedpan or whatever. Do it with joy. Put joy into it. You might say, how do you suddenly express joy? You just express it. You just say, I'll put joy into this if I'm baking a cake, if I'm scrubbing a floor, if I'm cutting the grass. No matter what I'm doing, or if it's in your church work, do it with joy. Put this joy into it. And you'll see it's like turning on a tap. The joy starts to flow. If you sit there and wait for the joy to come, you might wait a long, long time. Start expressing the joy. And then it comes. It just flows. And you can't help but feel it. And other people will feel it too. Don't be afraid to laugh or dance, even if you're on your own. Sometimes I put on a music and I've got a teddy bear. Don't tell anybody. And I get my teddy bear and we have a little jig around the room. And it does me good. If I feel maybe I've been studying too much and I'm feeling a bit heavy with all the metaphysics and thinking about the things I have to do, I like to do something daft and laugh at myself. Do you ever feel that God must have a wonderful sense of humor? I think he does. You know, I feel he's laughing at me all the time. He's saying, look at that thick Irish woman. You have to tell her about 20 times before she gets the message. Now it's your turn.
I have a friend whose life basically hit a wall. Not only did her ending marriage self-destruct, but the business went under, and she was indicted and put in prison. And pretty much as you were saying, it's very hard to sing and cry at the same time, but she found that as she finally got down to the business of trying to be joyful, of seeing her, of just really practicing Christian Science, even in the place. And this prison was a doozy. It was a light security prison, which she thought was going to be kind of like a day camp. They turned it into a maximum security prison. And as the weeks went by, I've had the opportunity to be in contact with her on a weekly basis. The growth, the joy that she has just from identifying herself as a child of God, not only herself, but everyone else around her, has been outstanding. In fact, it's been so outstanding that one time they searched her for drugs because she was so happy. But if you're really authentic, to turn around this person's life, not to get it all down on it, and even overcome it, she'll be released within a month of going to a halfway house and saying we should go on with life.
Isn't that wonderful? Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's it proved. Thank you very much.
Number of experience I had once when I was working as a nurse in the Lynn House, which is a facility in Alexandria, Virginia. And there was one lady, a guest who tended to be somewhat complaining and tended to kind of look on the nurses as being servants, you know. And this one particular day, I just came on duty and I was bringing a fresh water pitcher in her room, and apparently the nurse ahead of me had left the lady on the commode for like about 35 minutes, and I don't know, forgot about her, and take it back to the charter. So, and as soon as I came in and said, "Good afternoon, this is so-and-so," and do you know how much I'm paid to stay here? And without even thinking much, what came up was, "You know how little I'm being paid to put up with it." I feel like this is not a responsible time to take a straight man. But this lady I've been doing, we go into the program, for sometimes she'd be reported, and that just, she just started cracking up. She was absolutely mad. And I'm sure she realized the services that she were being provided were wonderful and worth whatever she was paying for. Just as I knew there was a lot more remuneration to it's a wonderful remuneration to the nurse than the financial. But it seemed to break the mesmerism, and we just go and after that, she just was a lot less complaining, and she seemed to appreciate things more, and we just had a wonderful performance.
I like that. Thank you very much.
Do you think Jesus laughed and had a sense of humor? I ask that because it's not something that I thought a lot about. But from time to time, the idea occurs to me. And as a matter of fact, evidently that very question was one that for hundreds of years medieval theologians and scholastics bitterly debated. And today, it's not a question which is central to any teaching or contemplation of Christian Science, but your talk naturally makes me think of it. And I just wonder if you have any reflections.
Yes, I think Jesus was a man of joy, that he had a quiet inner peace. Peter Henniker Heaton, I don't know if you know his poems, but the last poem in his book was about Jesus, and it was called The Man of Joy. And I think that Jesus had this lovely, quiet inner joy because he rejoiced in the truth that this was all a dream anyway, and that because of his close relationship to God, and he knew his own sonship, that he could rejoice in that. You know, he didn't need a funny occasion. He just rejoiced, absolutely rejoiced in a higher sense of joy that God made man perfect. If he didn't do that, he couldn't have healed the tragic cases that he had to look at, people with leprosy and all sorts of old diseases. You know, Mrs. Eddy said Jesus beheld in science the perfect man. And to behold a perfect man, where we see such awful people, you'd need a sense of joy, wouldn't you? Because sometimes it seems so difficult to love other individuals. But if we get into this joy of rejoicing, to know that no matter what you see about the people you work with or come in contact with, or a patient, it's a lie. It's a dream. And the person only needs wakened out of the dream, and so do you. So lift up your heart with joy and say, I'm not going to be taken in by that. I'm going to rejoice that that's not the truth. That there's only this perfect man there, and I'm just going to be rejoicing in that. Then we become more Christ-like. And I think Mrs. Eddy's hymn that says, "O gentle presence, peace and joy and power," to me say, peace and joy are power. That if I can stop my worrying about the person or the situation and claim peace and then claim joy, they become the power. Claim peace and joy, not only for me, but for the other person or people or whatever concerned. You know, claim their joy. We can do this for the people of all the countries involved in this war today. You could sit and watch the television, become so hypnotized by that picture that you would feel grief-stricken and absolutely helpless. But if you could come away rejoicing that it's only a dream, and if you can say, as a lecturer said once, you were there, Father, what did you see? He never saw anybody being blown to pieces or burned alive or hurt or injured or his children warring with each other. If we can rejoice in that truth, we certainly don't rejoice in the war or the picture that it presents, but if we can rejoice in that truth, then we are going to help to heal this world of its need for wars at all. The world has to come to see that, and we have to have patience with the world, not expect it to take a sudden leap and say it can overcome it all at once. But this war, although we don't like it, and it seemed very necessary because the man was given every opportunity and he didn't accept it. And so it seemed necessary, but I don't think there's ever been a war in the whole of history that has been a kinder war. There's such love and kindness being shown to everyone, and I think we can also rejoice that the world is at prayer together like it's never ever been. Even the Muslims, the Jews, the Christians of every denomination and every walk of life are praying together, and that prayer has more power than all the bullets and the missiles and the chemical weapons that ever there were. Let's rejoice in that and not be captive audiences to these mesmeric lies that are simply trying to make us believe there is a power named evil. There's only good, and only good will come out of this. only good for all people, for all those who are grieving, for their country and their loved ones. There was so much good come out of it all that only the good will remain. So let us rejoice in that.
That was also the situation in the great opposition of Europe. So many of the towns and cities, people started with prayer. We had the peaceful demonstrations, and the wall came down.
That's right. That's right. That's nice to know.
Okay, I know some of you need to get to work, and some of you may want to stay and ask a question or two. So I do want to say that Myrtle Smyth is in the country to lecture. She'll be at the Trenton Church tomorrow night at 8 o'clock, and we'll have buses going. And so let us thank her for her time.